Kids working 12-hour days back in the 1880s. Men taking young teenage boys as lovers in ancient Greece. Perms and shoulder pads in the 1980s. What do all these things have in common, other than the fact that they are truly awful?
They make your figure look more important, and they balance the body.
Well, all of these things were cultural norms that were completely acceptable in their day, and they would not fly today. Culture is constantly evolving, and what we find acceptable is too.
Citizens, protect yourselves.
Many things were once fine and are now scandalous. I'm Nostalgic Nick with Do You Remember? And today we're gonna look at 9 cultural norms from the 70s that just won't fly today. If you enjoy our Forbidden Time Capsule, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. But without further ado, come on and let's boogie on down to the roller disco. And don't worry, it is still allowed today. Not wearing seatbelts. There you are, driving cross-country in your family's Ford Pinto. Night approaches and you stretch out on the back seat, unclicking your seatbelt to get more comfortable. I'm just kidding. You haven't been wearing your seatbelt for the last 8 hours, and neither have mom and dad up front. Let's be honest, people rarely wore their seatbelts in the 70s. Heck, trips up 70 miles or more were regularly taken in the bed of dad's pickup, and nobody batted an eye. But that of course would not fly these days. Today, seatbelts are mandatory for people in the front seat of cars everywhere in the US, except of course New Hampshire, the only state with no seatbelt law on the books. Maybe they should change their state motto to live free and die. Legally drinking at 18. When watching a movie that portrays high school life in the 70s, I'm looking at you, dazed and confused. It's kinda striking just how much booze these kids have at their parties. I mean, how did they get 15 kegs? Who bought it? Well, the answer, of course, is they did.
Were you going to have a party here tonight, son? I don't know what that was all about.
Or at least the seniors did, because until 1984, the legal drinking age in the US was 18. That year, a law was passed trying to protect the developing brains of our youth and prevent drunk driving accidents. Fortunately, the law works, and now no teenagers in the US ever drink. I'm kidding, of course. The law has actually served to drive teenage drinking underground, and it's been a major boom to the fake ID business in college towns. In better news, it also turned 21 from a mundane, lame birthday to a momentous occasion perfect for binge drinking. That was sarcasm, folks, as Nostalgic Nick in no way endorses binge drinking. Cheers. Pregnant women drinking and smoking. Speaking of smoking and drinking, quick, think of the last person who should ever partake. If you're picturing your 5-year-old nephew Quinn, technically you're right, but not who I was going for. Nope, I was thinking of pregnant women. But boy oh boy were the 1970s a different time, when soon-to-be mothers smoked and drank without a care in the world, for the most part not knowing the potential damage they were doing to their unborn children. Thankfully today, study after study has confirmed that smoking and drinking are 2 of the worst things for developing fetuses. And for the most part, the practice has disappeared. But I don't know, my mom wouldn't hesitate to suck down some Virginia Slims and a 6-pack of hams when I was in the womb, and I turned out terrible. Letting children roam free. It's a bright, sunny summer day. You race out of your house to join your friends, yelling something unintelligible back at your mom. When before you know it, 6 hours later you trudge back in, happy, hungry, and exhausted after a perfect afternoon. It sounds amazing, right? Well, it would never, ever happen in this day and age. The days of letting your children roam the neighborhood freely, trapezing about as if they own the place, no adult in sight and no cares on their minds, is over. Parents these days are too scared of their kids being snatched off the street or befalling any number of other nefarious ends. Plus, with the advent of smartphones, it's become super easy to track your kids nonstop. And thus, the age of blissful parental ignorance has sadly come to an end. Rampant sexual harassment at work. If you were a working woman in the 1970s, your work environment was often short of ideal and, at worst, flat out dangerous. Women in the 70s had to put up with catcalling, bum grabbing, constant comments about their looks, and men in general just being gross little pervs. All in an environment where they were supposed to be professional and productive. Thankfully, due to laws passed and the creation of the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and a very public reckoning for some very powerful people during the Me Too movement, things have gradually been getting better for women in the workplace. And while we all still have a lot of work to do, just go back and watch Mad Men to see how far we have come.
Well, you're in the city now. Wouldn't be a sin for us to see your legs. If you pull your waist in a little bit, you might look like a woman.
Corporal punishment in schools. Thwack. School kids in the 70s dreaded the hard hammer of justice that was a teacher's ruler, whistling down to thump them on their knuckles, all in the name of preventing supposed malfeasance. But even worse was getting sent to the principal's office, where a friendly meeting with Mr. Paddle was sure to follow. All in all, kids getting beaten, kindly euphemized as corporal punishment, was quite common in the 70s school systems. But thankfully, that practice has all but disappeared, as the US banned it in... Oh, wait, we didn't? In fact, the US is one of only 3 developed countries in the world where the practice is still allowed. And over 180 countries have banned it in total, including even the UK, where getting a caning from the headmaster was basically their communion. Dangerous playgrounds. Sadistic ruler-wielding teachers weren't all kids in the 70s had to be careful with, because as soon as the bell sounded for recess, the floodgates opened and students poured forth to grapple with perhaps their #1 adversary, the classic 1970s playground, filled with metal that turned molten hot in the baking sun. Floored in concrete, that super soft classic landing spot, and soaring to heights that made any fall sure to result in broken bones. Playgrounds used to be pretty dangerous and pretty fun. Those metal slides that shot you out of a cannon with a fried backside, the 4-story wooden mazes that made tag into a great game of all time. Even the concrete was a perfect canvas for hopscotch and foursquare. But alas, with today's safety standards, all we're left with is pale rubber and plastic imitation of our once glorious past. Casual racism on TV. Man, TV was sure a wild time back in the 70s. Go back and watch almost any show, and I promise you, you will be surprised with the amount of things that would not fly today.
You're sitting together on a car!
But are proudly shown front and center, especially the casual racism. I mean, the Duke brothers tear around town in a car emblazoned with a massive Confederate flag. And cartoons, even worse. I don't need to mention anything other than the title of Hong Kong Phooey. Even the most popular shows were not immune. I know All in the Family is supposed to be edgy, but Archie Bunker as a character would just not ever exist today. Or at least someone with his views would not be the show's protagonist. While everything isn't perfect today, at least we've cut out most of the casual racism flowing nightly into our living rooms. And yeah, All in the Family is still one of the greatest shows of all time. It can be both. And there they are, some of the most common things from the 1970s that wouldn't fly today. So now we want to hear from you. Do you remember clouds of smoke in bars and restaurants? Did you wear a seatbelt back in the 70s? Can you think of something else from the 1970s that wouldn't fly today? Get in the comments and tell us your thoughts. If you enjoyed our video, please give it a thumbs up, it really helps. And subscribe to our channel so you never miss a memory. But from all of us here at Do You Remember, we want to thank you for watching.